So yes, indeed, my name is Jacco van Uden. I have two jobs, one of which I like. I love. Sorry. So yes, it's the Netherlands Study Center for Technology Trends and the Hague University of Applied Sciences. And Lucas approached me, do you want to contribute to this afternoon? And I said, okay, what it's about. And then indeed, there's all these words and ICT and art and propaganda and politics. And so I just did some cherry picking and decided to focus on value and arts because that's what I'm interested in. Within SCT, the Netherlands Study Center for Technology Trends, I do a foresight study. I've organized a foresight study. I worked there for another full day. Monday is my last day. A foresight study on the relation between art, science, and technology. And in addition to that, I'm the head of a research group on change management at the Hague University of Applied Sciences. And in both these jobs, I'm interested in the question, okay, to what extent is art valuable? To what extent can art be made valuable? And so and so. And rather than sort of trying to answer that question on a very abstract level, on the level of economics per se, I want to take it down one level and focus on organizations, focus on institutes, on companies, where that value is actually created. What I wanted to do in the next 10 or 15 minutes or so is to sort of briefly go through three perspectives in which you can do so. Art as a management tool, artistic interventions, and management as art. So the basic question is, how can art deliver its value? So that's already a very managerial question, which I like. So first up, art as a management tool. This is a book written by an Italian professor, Jacco van Uden, The Value of Art for Business. And this is a right management book. I don't know if you read management books, but this is one. The management book is a book for managers, which is something you should bear in mind, because managers are interested in the question, okay, how do we make things work? How do we improve business? And when you write a management book, you need a really well-defined problem. So you take about 15 or 20 pages or so as a management book author to sort of sketch sort of a dramatic scene, the world is coming to an end, and the book is the answer to this. And the problem that Professor Schumer addresses is that, well, he says when you look at how we talk about management, when you look at how we address organizations, is that we still think of organizations as machines. So the organizational discourse is all about measuring, about monitoring, about planning and control, and so on, which is nothing bad in itself, but the world has changed. So the organization as machine image only works if there's a predictable, stable context in which that organization operates, but that's no longer the case. So, and this is all very common in management books, so you need to refer to a business landscape or an environment that has become much more complex and is constantly changes, ambiguity, everything has become fluid, and so on. So, and that's why you write a management book, because you want to propose something different. So new management principles need to be adopted in order to create organizations that truly fit the emergent business landscape. So if you're ever among managers, just use the word emergent business landscape and you know you're in good shape. So, somewhere Giovanni Schumer has discovered that organizations are not machines. Organizations, he argues, are human systems, and for that reason, these things like emotions, energy, and aesthetics play an important role in organizations. But remember, this is a management book. This is a book for managers. So they immediately address the question, okay, fair enough, but how do we manage these things like emotions, energy, and aesthetics? How do we influence them? So that's a big management question. So he's got an answer. To him, the arts offer a new territory to inspire management. I don't know if you're familiar with the term management toolkit, but the idea is that managers walk around with all these tools and models and techniques, and they use that to make the organization work. And he says, well, our toolkit has become outdated. It's not up to date, so we need new tools for our toolkit. And what he suggests in his book is that now has come the time to add art-based management tools to that toolkit. And I'm not going into the details of how he does that, but because I'm primarily interested in the perspective that he takes. For him, art is something that can be at the manager's convenience. So art at your service, managers. So that's the first perspective, and I'm going to present it in a little while, or confront it with two different perspectives. So, but sort of zooming out and reflecting on what he does, for Schumer, art is not something that is scary for managers. It's something that is functional, or, and that's very important, it can be made functional. And what he does in that book, The Value of Arts for Business, you could argue, is to sort of tame the arts. It's to sort of pull its teeth and make it look nice, and so that it fits the managerial agenda. That's what he's after. So art has become a tool for management. So second stop is artistic interventions. So the problem with organizations these days is not that they're suffering so much from the economic crisis, but from their inability to address that economic crisis properly. So when you walk into an organization, you would have a lot of people and managers complaining somewhere along these lines. Okay, it's impossible for us to think outside of the box. No matter what we do, we arrive at the same unsatisfactory answers and boring solutions over and over. What we really need is a fresh perspective, a new sound. But where do you get that from? So we all know that socializing is a very socialization, I should say, is a driving force in organizations. So you bring in new people and immediately they start adapting to the existing language and they take it over. So what you could do instead is that you invite a management consultant, but they speak the same language as well, same problematic language. So what else can you do? So what else can you do? You can bring in the artist. So why artists? In heaven's name. Well, so these are sort of the arguments that are used for artistic interventions. But the idea is that artists have not been, or have not yet been, contaminated with the kind of management thinking that leads to nowhere. They take a different perspective. They see different things and they see things differently. And they question what is taken for granted and they propose the unheard of. So basically what it says here is that artists have no idea what's going on in an organization, and that's exactly why you should work with them. So in terms of how is this value delivered, so that's the key point that I want to address. So it's no longer this sort of abstract notion of art that can be turned into a tool. You actually bring in an artist. So the artist is the deliverer of the value of the art. And when you do it right, these organizers of artistic interventions say, well, it becomes much more than a gimmick. The organization, the company that invites the artist actually becomes the workspace of that artist. The organization becomes the medium through which the artist expresses itself. And what you're looking for in good artistic interventions is what you could call a sort of a productive friction between the world of art and management. So at the risk of being sort of very sort of cliche about what the world of art represents and what the world of management represents, in the organization art as a tool approach, you argue that, well, art isn't scary, or it does not need to be scary as long as it sits on the lap of managers. With artistic interventions, you actually say, well, there is a difference between those two worlds, and you want to make that difference productive. So you don't want them to grow together, but you want to remain or leave it intact, the conflict that is there. So, to sum up, with artistic interventions, you argue that art is fundamentally different from management, and that's a good thing. And value is delivered by artists who should never become part of the organization, so the distance must be kept. So you don't want to hire artists, you don't want them to become your employees. They are that sort of deviating force, a deviating sound that question what you're doing, that challenge what you're doing, and it's in that challenging that value is created. Last up is management as art. And this is, I guess, perhaps the most radical perspectives of all three. So when you explore this perspective, you basically ask yourselves the question, what if we do not accept that management and art are fundamentally different phenomena? And what if we try to define management as art? And maybe on a bit more on the academic level, what if we rethink management using the discourse, using the language of art, and arrive at a so-called maybe artistically informed understanding of management? And well, that may sound like a sort of a bizarre way of thinking, but that's actually not the case. Because when you look closely, our ideas of management are always modeled after something else. So where do we get inspiration from when we conceive of management? So this is a very dominant image. So an image that still determines to a large extent our ideas of management. So we like to think of organizations as armies. And when you think of organizations as armies, the manager needs to fit in there. So if an organization is an army, then probably your manager is a military officer, a high-ranking military officer. And that has a lot, that largely influences to a great degree our idea, our expectations of the manager. So when you think of the manager as a military officer, you suggest that this manager needs to be able to engage in strategic thinking. He or she needs to be able to develop standard operating procedures, give instructions, find allies, divide and rule. So the military discourse is brought to the organization and put to work. Another still very dominant image of management. So when you think of an organization as a machine, the manager sort of automatically becomes the engineer. And when you've defined a manager as an engineer, he or she should be in the business of optimizing for output, realize process efficiency, normalize and standardize, align systems. So it's the machine-like discourse that is being brought into the field of management. So what I want to do, not today, but in the research group that I'm with at the university, or the Hague University of Applied Sciences, is to think through the idea, what if we sort of try to build up management, but then using the language of the art? So when you talk about offering or delivering the value of the art, it's not so much an instrument, or it's not so much sort of bringing an artist, but it's sort of the artistic language that is used to deliver value. And so I'm not going to go into that now. And just leave it with this, with the summary. So these are just three perspectives, and by no means this is sort of an exclusive or the ultimate list. Art is a management tool where you look at art as being something that can be reduced to a will-less instrument serving the existing management agenda. Alternatively, you could try and deliver the value of art by artistic interventions, when the artist is the creator of change, the bringer of change, who is causing for productive friction. And thirdly, art as a way of thinking, a source of inspiration for redefining management as we know. So three perspectives on delivering the value of art. Check.
Thank you, Jacco.